Sup, guys? My internet is down right now because they're doing internet work, and I guess it's going to be the same on Monday, so fuck Comcast, I guess, for taking away our service that we pay for. I don't know. No, it's going to speed things up. Yeah, okay, my internet's already fast. I don't know what you guys are doing, but I'm just going to get you this video anyway from my phone because 5G is my only internet, and I'm going to try to do this from memory, just remember what I was going to talk about. Hopefully I can remember everything. I'm not at my home base now. Don't have my computer in front of me, so I can't go through and see everything and screen share and whatever. But I broke down the games. I'm going to try to get this right. 5-1 night last night. I actually did wind up on the money line on the Bruins only because the line dropped like right after I did the video. I'm like, man, I can get like a cheaper price on this. So I did. I just wound up with the money line on that. So I wound up going 5-1 last night. Nice, huge day, huge night to get me back with a little bit of padding as far as having a win this year, which hopefully I don't blow it and lose that with my nemesis college basketball today, because I do have mostly college basketball plays today in this big Friday card. What else is there to say about last night? I mean, we have 1-0 hockey wins on favorites, Bruins and Avalanche. Or no, Avalanche wound up being 2-1, I guess. I think they were up 1-0 late. I was like, that's going to be the final. Don't know what happened, but they wound up winning 2-1. All right, fine, cool. Toronto Raptors outright win in NBA as an underdog. Good win there. Nice money line underdog. And it looked like I had a chance to sweep the board and get all the money line underdog cashes too. And that wound up not happening as the Utah Jazz had a big lead in the second half. They were up double digits in the second half. They blew the entire thing and then didn't even cover and lost by 6 or 8 or whatever it was. That was my one loss last night, and that probably shouldn't have been a loss either. NC State in college football looked like they had the chance to get the money line, the outright win. As they were right in that game. They fell behind 2 scores. They scored twice to retake the lead. And they were up, I think they were up 6 with not much time left. Georgia Tech drove down and got in. And Georgia Tech, I think, as I had mentioned in that handicap, I think King was in the game kind of, but he was in and out of the game. Like he was not, like I think, like I said, his arm was still injured, so he wasn't going to be at 100%. And I was right about that. But their other quarterback, I think Pyron, whatever his name is. I forget all these guys' names. I don't even remember which guy is which at this point. Pyron, I have no idea. One of their backup quarterbacks, and I think it was the one who I said wasn't going to play because it was going to ruin his redshirt status. I think he did actually play. I think that he was the one who got in on that rushing touchdown which wound up giving Georgia Tech the win. Very unfortunate, because then NC State did have a chance to maybe get a game-winning field goal at the end to still get me that money line win, and they got down into Georgia Tech territory. They had a dropped pass, well, kind of a dropped pass. It would have been kind of a difficult catch, but it was still a catchable throw over the middle with 5 seconds left, and they had at least one timeout left at that point, so they were going to be able to get in range of a makeable field goal there if he made that catch. Didn't happen. They wound up attempting a 58-yard field goal, which maybe it was the right move, maybe it wasn't. I don't know, because their kicker's longest was 52, but he did have the wind behind him. The weather wasn't that bad, and he was lined up in the middle of the field, so it was makeable, I guess. Probably less makeable. I know I mentioned that Bears blocked field goal that I had where I lost that one last week, the Chicago Bears. Side note here, tangent. That was a makeable field goal, but it wasn't as close as I remember thinking that it was, but whatever. The NC State one, his kick had the distance on it. It just went wide. What can you do? So NC State covered. They definitely had the opportunity to win outright. And then the Cleveland Browns won outright, and that was kind of a roller coaster. Pittsburgh's offense got nothing done in that game. Cleveland was winning 18-6 with like 4 minutes left or something. I'm like, this game is over. The snow had started. You love to see that, man. Cleveland's talking about building a roof stadium. No, fuck that. Like, are we going to be a bunch of pussies here? I know Chicago's doing it too. No. We want outdoor snow football. Everybody loves that. That was awesome last night. That's what you want. Steelers, Browns in the snow. That's like old school. 2 good defenses. Come on, man. Browns were holding up to my handicap quite well, though, winning 18-6. Jameis Winston, he looks like a motivated dude out there, man. He doesn't care what their record is. He wants to prove himself. He's out there. That was part of my handicap, too. He looks like he wants to win, man. He's hungry. I like it. But Cleveland, even though they were up 18-6, they gave up a touchdown, immediately fumbled the ball over, which was Winston. I'm not going to blame him for that. He played fine last night. I mean, that was just, what can you do? And then Pittsburgh got another touchdown. So it went from 18-6 Cleveland to 19-18 Pittsburgh in a span of like a minute, basically, less than a minute. That was unbelievable. I'm like, they're actually going to lose this game, but they did not. The hunger was there, baby. And Nick Chubb wound up with the game-winning touchdown. Jameis Winston had a huge touchdown to give Cleveland the 18-6 lead, I think, earlier. He got hit pretty hard getting into the end zone there, too, and he didn't even seem to care. Everybody was just going nuts. But then at the end, he got them downfield again. Nick Chubb with the game-winning touchdown. Cleveland cover and outright win there for me. Hell yeah. Let's move on to today. College basketball. I'm going to try to remember what my plays are. We have college basketball all day today, man. Friday, usually a light college basketball day once you get into the actual season, but we're in the early season where we have all these tournaments going on, and I do have 2 plays in the tournament, so I'll just get to it, man. I'll just cut right to the chase, try to make this video not as long. I'm going to play Virginia, which I think is probably at plus 11.5 right now or something like that. Virginia is getting a lot of points right now. And this is mostly a fade of St. John's in whatever it is, the Bahamas tournament, I think is what they're in. I forget. Whatever tournament they're in. I don't even remember. But it's a neutral site game. It's St. John's. Even though they played the earlier of the 2 games last night, they were in a double overtime barn burner against Baylor. That was a huge matchup. I mentioned I liked Baylor in that game, but St. John's was blowing them out of the building for a lot of the middle of that game. And then St. John's kind of ran out of steam, and Baylor grinded and came all the way back and not only got back into the game, was able to send it into overtime. It went 2 overtimes, and Baylor won the game by 1. That is a brutal loss for St. John's, man. That was their first loss of the season, but it was in a double overtime step-up game against one of the top teams in basketball, basically in Baylor, like a top 15 team at the very least. Big ranked matchup. I just don't see how St. John's turns around and is able to go full effort again here, and I know it's one of these tournaments. I don't think these guys really care that much about, like, we're going to win this tournament. I think they really focus more on individual games like that. That was a huge game against Baylor. Meanwhile, Virginia looked bad yesterday, and they only scored 40-something points, but that's typical Virginia. Their offense does suck, but they still play good defense. They held Tennessee's offense in check. It was just an ugly game. The final score was ugly. They lost by double digits. What can you do? But that was a game that was kind of a lesser effort game than the St. John's one was, and now St. John's is laying double digits against this Virginia team that Virginia plays a complete contrast in styles, man. And after St. John's runs up and down the court like that for a double overtime game, they might be winded, man. Virginia's going to come in and play like the slowest pace they'll see all year, basically. They play one of the slowest paces in all of D1 basketball. They're going to grind them down. That's good if you want a big underdog like this, man. You get Virginia, who plays defense, and they grind the game to a screeching halt, basically. So I like Virginia to cover in that one. I think they could mess up the game quite a bit and just get into a low-scoring kind of slugfest, and that's what you want. Just come within that number, man. So Virginia, plus 11.5 in that one. And I'm not sure that Virginia is really that bad, even though I know they have a new coach there and whatever. I mean, beating Villanova at least showed me something, even though Villanova's a little bit down, too. I mean, that was a decent win. So Virginia is also coming off their first loss, but it was a lesser effort loss than St. John's was, to say the least. And St. John's, I mean, when you have the game like that and you think you're going to get that big win over Baylor and the whole thing slips away from you like that, that's a heartbreaking loss. So Virginia plus the points. In the other game in that tournament, I don't have a play, but I'll just point out that Tennessee is now flipping around and playing Baylor today. And Tennessee had moved up last I saw from like a 2-point favorite to a 5-point favorite, and I think it is warranted. I think they should probably be about a 3 or 4-point favorite, in my opinion. I think that's kind of what KenPom has. KenPom, by the way, I think only has that other line being like 9 in that Virginia game. So according to his rankings, there's value in that number as well, which I'm bucking him in one of my games, but what can you do in this slate here? But I lean to the Tennessee side against Baylor, because also Baylor's coming out of that huge win there, that big win, that barn burner of a game where they had to put in a huge effort to come back against St. John's, double overtime. I don't know if they're going to have that much left, man. Tennessee had an easier win, so I like the Tennessee side in that one too, and I think they're the better of the two teams, even without Dalton Connect still there and whatever, who's looking good in the NBA, by the way. So that's just a lean there. I figured I'd talk about that because it is a ranked matchup, I think, right? Yeah, it is. Baylor and Tennessee there. My other plays, what do we got here? I'm trying to remember what my other plays even are now. Texas, minus 8.5. I think that's a little bit of a short line, too. I think KenPom might have that around 8 or so, 8 or 9, but I still think it's a little bit short for what the game is. This is going to be a fade of St. Joe's, which is in one of these other tournaments. I forget which tournament is which, man. So you'll have to check. It's another neutral site game, though. But Texas is coming off a game where they were like almost a double-digit favorite, I think, against Syracuse, and they didn't play particularly well. I think they kind of undershot as far as what Texas is concerned. You'll have to go look, because some of my handicaps today also had to do with like outlier percentages happening in the previous game, where I'm going to play on teams that underperformed in their previous game and didn't shoot as well. Shot well below average, so you expect them to kind of move back to the mean there, and I'm playing maybe against some teams that shot out of their minds and are expected to regress a little bit. So Texas, I do like, but it's also because St. Joe's, they're coming off a big upset win of Texas Tech, man. Texas Tech, they kind of like to play this grinding, like, defensive style. That's kind of their MO. I don't know if they've continued doing that recently, but that was a big upset win for St. Joe's, and they did that on the heels of like multiple in-state like rivalry wins too. I got to check the time, make sure I'm still good here. So big upset win for St. Joe's, and I don't know if they're gonna have that much left, and they're running into Texas, who is a slightly lesser team than Texas Tech. But that was like Texas Tech was a 10.5 point favorite in that game, I think, and St. Joe's pulled off the upset while Texas barely scraped by Syracuse. So I think Texas kind of underperformed in that game. St. Joe's overperformed. They might run out of steam a little bit here. And St. Joe's is a team that likes to run and try to push the pace a bit. And Texas is going to kind of want to slow the pace down a little bit. They do play an uglier style, which not great when you're laying points, but I'm still going to go with Texas in that one based on that handicap. Maybe it's the weakest of those plays, though, but I like that one as well. Then maybe the biggest disparity between a team coming off of playing an awful game against a team coming off of playing a really good game is I'm going to fade Norfolk State, as I believe they either pulled off the outright upset or they came really close to pulling off the upset against Stanford. You'll have to go look, but they played a really good, like, max effort game against Stanford as like a 20-something point underdog. Norfolk State coming off of that, I don't know that they're going to have that much left. They're coming into a game against Grand Canyon here. Grand Canyon, yeah, I mean, I lost on them. Maybe I was overvaluing them a little bit, and I lost on them against Arizona State. I liked that spot, but Grand Canyon, they're a team that plays a complete contrast in style to Norfolk. Norfolk likes to slow the game down. They're from an uglier small conference than MEAC, although KenPom actually has Norfolk State ranked in like the 180s right now, I think, and they're usually in like the 220s, so they seem like they're a bit of a more competitive team maybe this season so far than they usually are, but maybe that's not going to continue to be the case. I don't know. Grand Canyon, I liked what they did the last couple of years, man. They built themselves into a nice program, made the tournament, got a tournament win last year. I think they are maybe not as good as they were last year, but they're still a team that shoots. They like to push the pace, so they're going to like to speed this game up, man. These two Arizona teams I'm going to talk about in this video here like to speed the pace of the game, man. So I think that's going to throw Norfolk State out of their element. I'm laying minus 15, I think, with Grand Canyon here, or 14.5, actually, I guess. It looks like it's moved up from like 12.5 all the way up to 14, somewhere in that range. KenPom actually has this game at 9 or 10, and I don't get it. I don't like to go against KenPom's rankings very often when they're off by that much from where the line is, but this situation, I just think calls for it, man, because Norfolk State, how do you come off such a big effort against one of the big guys, the ACC? Hey, weird, it's Stanford being in the ACC. I still can't even wrap my mind around that, but huge step-up game like that. Now you have to turn around and play again. Not only do you have to do that again against another superior team to you, but it's a team that plays faster tempo and is going to try to speed you up, which you don't like if you're Norfolk State. But also, Grand Canyon, they're sitting at 2-2 right now, so their record doesn't look good. So even the betting public might come in and look at this and think, I think Norfolk State has a better record than that, above 500, and think, how am I getting 15 points in this game? Even though maybe they know the name Grand Canyon, realize they are the better team, but it still might appear to be value from the perspective of the public. But Grand Canyon, they're coming off a hideous performance where they were a 17.5 point favorite, I think, at home, and they lost to UC Davis. I think that's going to piss them off, man. I think they're going to show up focused after an embarrassing loss like that. And I think that game was right off of the Arizona State game. That was a step-up game against Arizona State. You play one of the now Big 12 teams in Arizona State. That's a big step-up game for you, man. It was an in-state rivalry game as well for Grand Canyon. So I think they just were hung over after that game, even though they didn't play particularly well in that game, and lost a bet for me on that one. But I got to turn it around in college basketball, man. I think I've won 2 bets in a row now in college basketball, and I want to keep it going, man, because I had a bad start to the year. I want to get it right and right the ship here. So Grand Canyon minus 15, 14.5 actually, I guess is what it is. Whatever the line is there. I like it, man. And Grand Canyon shot like 14% or maybe even worse from 3-point range in that last game against UC Davis. They shot horribly. That's not going to happen again. They're a pretty good shooting team, so I expect them to kind of progress back to the mean, whereas Norfolk State, I think, had a ridiculously high shooting percentage in their game. I think they might have shot like 50% from 3 or maybe even more than that. That's not something that they usually do over in that program. So I think that's going to regress back to the mean as well. So Grand Canyon minus the points there. And then the other Arizona game I mentioned is Arizona. And I get to talk about the other ranked matchup today and also have a play on the game. I'm going to fade Duke, and I'm going to play Arizona in this one, -1. I think it's the line you can get there. Yes, Duke is the better team. Duke, a little bit better defensively, but Duke, they like to grind the game down to a screeching halt, man. It's something I keep talking about, these pacing contrasts. Arizona, completely the opposite. Arizona likes to run, push the pace, and Arizona's off their first loss, which was, I think, their first true road game. Tough game against Wisconsin. Even though Arizona pushed the pace in that game, Arizona lost the game. Wisconsin somehow was able to beat them playing at Arizona's pace, but Arizona dominated the boards in that game, and they had like 30 more rebounds than Wisconsin did in that game. So Arizona has a massive size advantage. Even against Duke, I think Arizona has a bit of a size advantage. I mean, they're one of the biggest teams in the country, but so I don't expect them to have that much of a rebounding edge in this one, but they're still a very good rebounding team, very huge team in Arizona. Weird combination of speed and size, which is why I liked them in the tournament last year, but they don't do well in the tournament, man, for whatever reason. They were my champion pick last year for that size speed combo. But these teams that run tend to not do as well in the tournament either because they run out of gas. That's not great either. But we're not talking about a tournament here. We're talking about, this is a regular season game at Arizona's home stadium, I'm pretty sure. So this is the first true road game for Duke. And Duke, yeah, they're coming off blowing out Wofford, but they're not going to be in a letdown or anything like that. I unfortunately had Wofford in that game because I thought it was a sandwich because Duke was coming off that first loss of the season to Kentucky. So I thought it was a tough game for them to be coming off of. They had this big game up next against Arizona. But Duke blew out Wofford. Now they're having to go on the road, and this is going to be their first time, not only on the road, but in, I believe this is the Mountain Time Zone. So this is going to be a shift of multiple hours, and the game is at like 10:30 p.m. Eastern. So for a Duke team that hasn't left the Eastern Time Zone yet, they're going to be playing until like 12:30, 1 a.m. their time. That's going to mess with their biological clock, even though I know they have some extra days off here, so maybe they got out into the Pacific Time Zone early to adjust to the time clock, maybe, but I still think it's going to be a difficult spot for them to go out there with this pacing contrast here. Arizona's coming off a loss that's probably going to anger them, and they shot well under what they usually shoot in that game, and low percentages again. I think they were in like the teens shooting from 3 in that game. I don't expect that to happen again. So I like Arizona for all those reasons. And Duke, as much as they might not overlook Arizona, I'm not necessarily saying they will, but their next game up, Duke is like one of the top ranked teams, and even though, well, right now I think they're only ranked like 11 and Arizona's 17, so Duke is underranked right now, and Arizona is probably ranked about where they should be. According to KenPom, at the very least, KenPom I think has this game being like a Duke by 1 type of game, but it's just right in that ballpark of whichever team, it's like basically a pick 'em game, basically. So either team -1 doesn't matter. But Duke, they have Kansas up next, man. Kansas is the #1 ranked team in the country. So if they are going to ever overlook Arizona, it might be in a spot like this where they're coming off a blowout victory and they have Kansas up next. And again, it's just a tough spot because it's the first true road game for them. All right, NHL, we got 2 games. I'm not playing the NHL, but I will point out that maybe Winnipeg could arguably be in a letdown spot because they just beat Florida. After losing at Florida, they came home, beat Florida in Winnipeg, and now Winnipeg is headed back out on the road to Pittsburgh. Arguably, it's a tough spot, and they might overlook Pittsburgh after a big win like that, but it is also the start of a road trip, and I always point out teams do tend to be focused at the start of a road trip, so I still would lean against Winnipeg, though, because they are coming off the big win over Florida there. You could maybe take a shot on the Pittsburgh money line there. I don't want to do it, so I'm just going to pass. And the other game is some ugly game. I don't even, what is it, Buffalo, Anaheim or something? No thanks. No, not going to pay attention to that one, whatever the game is. I might even be wrong about which teams are involved in that, but whatever. Then, what else we got here? NBA, so the Celtics, I would lean against the Celtics, but I don't know if I quite want to do it, man, because they're coming off that huge win. They beat Cleveland, big hyped matchup, man. It was the undefeated Cleveland team against the returning champ Boston Celtics, still the top team in basketball, probably the Boston Celtics. This is a spot where the Celtics tend to not be totally focused, man. Coming off a huge win like this, going on the road to face one of the weakest teams in the NBA, the Washington Wizards. Celtics are laying 15.5 in this game. They're certainly going to be public as well, but it looked like they actually had some money coming in on their side too. I would disagree with that, obviously. I mean, this could be a game where the Celtics just don't care about this game that much and just show up, basically, and think they can win the game. So I would lean to taking the points with Washington, but I don't necessarily know that I want to do that. And I think Washington's on some big losing streak. I think they got blown out in the last game. They do have a couple of days off. Both teams, I think, are coming off a couple of days off. So I think that would be more beneficial to Washington. But it's a game where it's such a mismatch that it is possible that Washington still just gets blown out in the game. So I don't want to touch it, but I would lean to taking the points with Washington. The one game that I do want to play, but I'm kind of waiting for a little bit of information here, and I don't know if I should be, but I want to play Dallas. So Dallas is starting a road trip here. They're going to Denver, where they did just lose at Denver not too long ago. And the one time they faced Denver this year, Denver kind of got, not really revenge, but Denver got their nice win against the team that won the Western Conference last year. So it was a big win for Denver. Now Dallas is going back to Denver. They're going into elevation, but because it's the start of a road trip, I think it is definitely a focus spot for Dallas to start the road trip, and I think they're going to be extra focused because it's an injured player theory spot. Luka Doncic got hurt in the last game, man. Luka is out in this game. It looks like we don't know when he's going to be back right now, but that's the type of game, man, when you lose your star player. As I always say, you get some benefit in the line because the odds makers have to adjust the line in the other direction for him being out, and the team usually steps it up in that first game without him. So I expect them to do that, and on top of that, again, it's the start of a road trip and a focus spot against a good team. So I expect that to be the case. The only question is, so I like it. It's injured player theory spot for Dallas. Right now it's sitting at about 3. The market indicators look like they're on Dallas as the line has moved down a little bit towards Dallas. Dallas has the cash percentage on them, at least as far as it is right now. Denver has the ticket percentage on them as the public is looking at this. I'm thinking without Luka, and you're giving me like basically it's almost a spread where it's just pick the winner on Denver. Give me Denver, but you got to pay attention to this Jokic scenario, man. I thought he was hurt, but as I pointed out, I think in my last video or 2 days ago maybe, he's not actually hurt. He's been out for personal reasons. I don't know what that means. So you got to keep an eye on that. So if he remains out, yeah, I like Dallas because nothing changes as far as Denver is concerned, and it's an injured player theory spot on the Dallas side. And Denver is actually returning home from a road trip, even though it wasn't a long road trip. It's still a return home spot, which tends to be a bit of a distracted spot. Both teams, I think, do have a couple of days off right now. Denver might have more days off, but I think that might exacerbate the return home a little bit because you get settled in back at home a little bit. So I think it is, scheduling-wise, it's a worse spot for Denver. And market indicators look like they're on Dallas. Dallas has the extra benefit of the injured player theory. stepping it up that first game without Luka. The only question is Jokic going to come back? So if he doesn't, the line's going to remain about the same. Grab Dallas at the +3, because if he isn't going to play, the line might move towards Dallas. So this is the game that you have to play here, where how much value do you think you're going to gain by waiting if Jokic does come back versus how much you're going to lose if he doesn't come back and the line moves a little bit more in the other direction. Because I think the odds makers are kind of splitting the difference, putting the line at about 3 here. I think because they don't know if Jokic is coming back or not. So I think if he does come back, it's going to move up to 4, 4.5, maybe 5. And I think if he isn't going to play, I think you're going to see that line drop even further towards Dallas. So that's the game you got to play. So do you want to just go in and grab Dallas +3? Maybe. I do want to play Dallas here. I probably will, but it's just a question of what the number is going to be. And if Jokic does come back, you know what I always say, that's the reverse injured player theory spot, or now the reverse player on personal leave spot. I don't know what you want to call it, but if he comes back, he's been out for a while. Denver has to readjust to him being back into the lineup. He has to get back in rhythm again, whatever the case may be. So I like the Dallas Mavs in that one, plus the points. That will be a play. And that's it. So it's 5 plays for college basketball. And I hope college basketball starts flipping it around and turning it around for me, man. I don't want to keep this going. I don't want to lose what I gained last night, because last night was a great night last night. And then NBA tonight. I feel a little bit less confident about these plays. I was really confident about the Cleveland game last night, Cleveland Browns. I liked NC State a lot last night. Tonight, I got to get my bearings in college basketball, and hopefully I'm not way off here. And then college football, I don't have any plays. I'll talk about the 3 games quickly here. The first game up is Temple against UTSA, right? Yeah. So this is a situation where I'm trying to remember what the situation even is here with UTSA. UTSA, you can correct me if I'm wrong, go look, but I think UTSA is still playing to become bowl eligible here, and Temple is kind of just playing out the stretch as they've had 7 losses for a couple weeks now, and even after taking their 7th loss, Temple actually, I think, won last week against FAU. Not an impressive win, but Temple has also switched quarterbacks, and whoever they have in at quarterback now is actually a little bit better. So interesting scenario there. And UTSA, you're going to have to go look, because either they are already bowl eligible or they're fighting to become bowl eligible. And I think they are coming off a big win over North Texas, I think, and maybe they did become bowl eligible already. So you might be looking at this and thinking, well, it almost looks like a sandwich for UTSA, because they are, I believe they're coming off a win over North Texas, and Army is their last opponent. But no, actually, I'm trying to remember how I handicapped this. I do think they're sitting at 5 wins right now. So I think UTSA needs this last win to become bowl eligible. They're like a 14.5, 15-point favorite in this game. So I think they're going to show up for that reason and get it done, even though, yes, they are coming off a big win over North Texas. They have Army up next. But which game do you think they're going to think that they need to win to become bowl eligible? And on top of that, this is senior night for them, and it's in the Alamo Dome. So I think UTSA is going to show up for this game for that reason. I think because they're playing for bowl eligibility, it's their last home game of the season. They want to send the seniors off right, and they're playing a nationally televised game at home, which usually does not happen for them. So I would lean to the UTSA side actually slightly for those reasons, because Temple, they're just playing out the stretch. So motivationally, they don't have a whole lot left to play for here. But with Temple's new quarterback in there, their offense has been better than completely inept at the very least, even though they are one-dimensional still, or better than being zero-dimensional, and they only throw the ball. But UTSA, their defense is not that good against the pass. It's a lot better against the run. And this being on the fast track in the Alamo Dome, UTSA is certainly going to score against this bad Temple defense. So the way I would actually play this game is the over. I would not want to play the side. If I was going to play this game, I would look to play the over. But I believe the total's gone up a bit from 52.5, somewhere in that range, up to like 55. So you're losing a little bit of value on that, but I still expect this to be a fast game. This is not going to be a snow game between Pittsburgh and Cleveland, although that game still went over. I told you it was an overreaction on that total, and it looked like it wasn't going to go over even that total, but it did in the end. Somewhat helped out by that turnover, but I mean, that's what you get with bad weather too. So I thought it was an over adjustment. It went over that line and would have stayed under the original line there. Interesting scenario there. So a lot of guys that are out there playing middles on totals, I think they scooped the bet there on the total there. If guys that came in and played, this is an aside, but in that NFL game, the middle players, if they came in and somehow got like under 40 or 41 or whatever in that game, and then also came back and played over 36.5 or whatever, they got both, I think, in that game, because I think it landed 39 in that game last night. That's just insane, but whatever. Or did it? I don't remember now. You can, maybe it actually went over that. What was the finals? No, final was 24-19, right? So it actually went over both. Never mind. I think it won by 44. What am I even saying? So never mind. Or 43. Never mind. Anyway, back to this UTSA game, though. Yeah, I like the over because it is on the fast track, but you have lost a few points in value. But I think Temple's offense is being a little bit undervalued, and their offensive strength plays into UTSA's defensive weakness at the very least. And UTSA should be able to put up a lot of points with Owen McCown, right? Is that his name, the quarterback? He's Josh McCown's son is their quarterback there. I don't know how good he really is, but Temple's defense is probably going to give up some points on the fast track there. So over would be the way I look there. Purdue and Michigan State is the next game up. And Michigan State, I like the Michigan State side in this one, but I don't know that I would really want to lay 13.5 with a team that's more defense first. Michigan State is a much more defensive team, but their offense may be coming around a little bit because their offense, there were going to be some growing pains, man. They have a new coach in there. They brought over some of his guys. He came from Oregon State. He brought over some of his guys from Oregon State. Aiden Childs, their quarterback. They were going to take some time to gel, and maybe their offense is because maybe they have a little bit more chemistry and rhythm now because they've been at it for an entire season now at this point almost. So that's a little bit better. So I would still lean to laying the points with Michigan State in this game. Michigan State's coming off a gauntlet of games, man. I mean, they played so many big games. They played what did they? They played Ohio State, Penn State, Indiana. I think they played almost all the top teams. They played Michigan because that's a huge rivalry, even though Michigan's down a little bit this year. But I think they played Oregon too. Maybe one of those teams, maybe they didn't play, but they played most of the best teams in the Big Ten, basically. They had a gauntlet, man. And they came out of that gauntlet, and they played Iowa, actually. They played Iowa, so maybe they didn't play Penn State, but they played Iowa. So they played a lot of good defenses in there, too, and they came off of that, and they lost to Illinois in their last game as a favorite, I'm sure, because Illinois is not very good. I think Michigan State was probably favored in that game. So they're coming off that ugly game, and Michigan State, they had to have been looking to want to win that game because Michigan State needs to become bowl eligible still. Michigan State, I mean, I don't think they had higher aspirations than that because they've been a down program recently. So I think their aspirations this year, just checking the time here again, their aspirations were to make a bowl, man. They still want that, and they can still get it because they have a home game tonight against a bad Purdue team where they're a double-digit favorite, and they finished the season with another home game against Rutgers. They need to win both games to become bowl eligible, but that is certainly doable. They're going to be a home favorite in both games, I would imagine. Obviously, they are tonight. So it's still right there. They can still do it. So I think they're going to show up. If they want that bowl eligibility, I think they will show up here. I think they're the better team on both sides of the ball probably against Purdue. I know Purdue has switched up their quarterback. I'm not impressed with Purdue at all, man. I mean, they put up that good offensive performance against Illinois. I think that looks like an outlier. And that was the first game with that new quarterback in there, and since then he's been awful. But they have faced some good defenses. I mean, they faced Penn State. Maybe Michigan State didn't face Penn State, but Purdue faced Penn State. They faced Oregon, who's still a good defense, even though I don't think they're as good as Penn State or Ohio State. But so yes, Purdue did face some good teams as well in there, but Purdue, I just think they're a bad team, man. They only have one win on the season, and do they have that much left to play for here? I mean, I don't know. I forget. They're coming off of another game where they lost pretty badly, I think, but really, you're just playing out the stretch at this point. Yes, it is a nationally televised nationally televised game here, but still. I mean, I just think, I don't know, man. They're just kind of playing out the stretch. Michigan State has a little bit more to play for here because they're still playing for bowl eligibility, and they're coming off a real embarrassing loss. Or Purdue, they weren't expected to win their last game or anything like that. Michigan State was expected to beat Illinois. Losing to Illinois like that, it's an ugly loss. But like I said, they were coming off a stretch of a bunch of big, kind of physical defenses in a row. So I just think they didn't have that much left. After that, this has the makings of a bounce-back spot to me for Michigan State. It's just a matter of, do you want to lay that many points in a game with a low total in the 40s with a team that is better on defense than offense. I don't know, but Purdue is just so bad on both sides of the ball that I would still lean that way, and I don't really have much of a lean on the total at all in this game. I mean, I don't know what to expect out of Purdue, actually, really, to be honest, but Michigan State, I think maybe their offense is actually being a little bit undervalued, so it is possible that maybe the total's a little bit too low in a game like this, being in the 40s. Maybe both offenses being a little bit overlooked here, coming off a stretch of like pretty solid opponents for both teams. I don't know, but you could argue the same thing for their defenses. Like maybe their defenses are actually not as bad. Purdue's, I think, still is pretty bad, though. Michigan State's, I think, is actually a pretty good defense, though. And that difference in defenses, I think, is probably going to be the difference in this game. Michigan State, like I said, although they're also the better team offensively here. And then in the final game up, you have a UNLV team who's back in the rankings, back in the top 25 on the road at San Jose State. This is an interesting one, too. UNLV's laying 7.5, I think, on the road here. UNLV, they still have reason to show up because I think getting into the Mountain West Championship, I think, is still not out of reach for them, but I would have to go check. I'm not entirely sure about that, but somehow Colorado State is up there, still undefeated in conference. UNLV, I think, is sitting at 1 loss in conference. They're behind Colorado State and Boise, of course. So they're not going to catch Boise. I mean, Boise's too good. Boise's going to be in that game. But Colorado State, I mean, they played a really weak schedule. That Colorado State team, if they make the Mountain West Championship game, good luck to them. I think they're going to get annihilated in that game if they happen to make it. It would be against Boise. But Colorado State, I don't think they even deserve to be there. But I'm assuming that UNLV could still potentially catch Colorado State, but I'm not 100% sure about that. So that being the case, I think they do still have a reason to show up in this game. And then on the other hand, San Jose State, they have gotten into a bowl already. They have 6 wins, so they'll be back to a bowl again. They've been in bowls multiple straight years, I think, now at this point. So they've reached their goal, but does that mean they're not going to show up? No, I don't think so, because this is a primetime TV game that they're hosting, so I think they're still going to show up. I don't remember if it's their last home game or not, too. It might be, but if it's senior night for them, that's another reason they're going to show up in a game like this. But rather than try to gauge what's going to happen in the side in this one, which is a tough call, actually. San Jose State, I believe they became bowl eligible 2 weeks ago, and then they played a decent game last week against Boise. They lost by 21, but I think they came within the number there, and it was not an embarrassing performance at all. So coming off of that, are they going to be a little bit out of steam? Maybe. So does that mean the lean on the side would be to UNLV? If they still have something to play for to try to get to the Mountain West Championship? Maybe, but I don't know. The side is really tough to gauge. I don't even know if I want to give a lean on that. But the way I would lean in this game is actually to the under. Even though I usually like to say that totals that are high like this usually indicates that you should be looking to try to go over. And this total is somewhere in the 60s. I think in the 61 range, somewhere around there. But in this game, I actually don't think so. Because I think it's skewed too high because UNLV have looked pretty good offensively at times, even with Malik Williams in there after their other quarterback left the team. Sluka, I think was his name. Malik Williams is a dual threat quarterback. He's good. But this UNLV offense, they're pretty good both running and passing, but they run the ball more than they pass. And the issue with that is that San Jose State is actually good at defending the run. They're not as good at defending the pass, but their run defense is actually pretty solid. So that goes up against UNLV's more offensive strength. UNLV likes to run the football. So that kind of lends itself towards maybe looking towards an under in this one and the total being a little bit too high. But also, as I was going to say, might be too high because of what UNLV's offense has looked like this season. And also, what do people remember about San Jose State? The other time we saw them in primetime, I don't know if they had another primetime game, but the other primetime game they had, maybe they've had a couple other ones, but the other primetime game, the one that we really remember was that barn burner of a game against Washington State where they lost 52-51, and I think it was an overtime game. 103 points scored in the game. I think that's what people remember. Like, oh, the San Jose State team, like they can score all over the place. I don't really think so. I think that game just got out of hand. It was just a bit crazy. Washington State, maybe not that great defensively either, although San Jose State Maybe not as much either, but like I said, UNLV is going to be looking to run the ball, which might slow the pace of the game a little bit. And San Jose State's defense does match up better against run-based offenses. On the other side, San Jose State is a very one-dimensional offense where all they can do is throw the ball. They can't really run the ball. And when you're one-dimensional like that, that's just not really great for your offense in general. UNLV, not terrible on the defensive side of the ball. So, again, I think I would look towards the under there. That's going to do it for me. All my plays today, man. Let's not regress from last night's big win here, man. My plays tonight, once again, are college basketball. 4 plays. Virginia plus 11.5, I think is what the number is there. Texas minus 8.5. Grand Canyon, I think, minus 14.5. And Arizona minus 1. And then in NBA, maybe waiting around, but Dallas Mavericks, we'll call it like plus 3 or something like that. That's going to do it for me. I'm Tower Gang Toad. Go follow the Tower Gang Podcast. Patreon.com/Tower Gang. You get bonus content, live pre-show, post-show. Hang out with us in a Telegram. That's going to do it for me, man. Peace out. Let's have a good Friday.